So, guys, today we are going to discuss one of the important concept of any kind of VPP deployment you take into consideration. This concept is very important, right? So, why it is important? What is this concept? How to implement this concept? What is the need of this concept in real time? And right, all these interview related questions, along with what are the different approaches to implement API versioning in ASP.NET Core. All these things we are going to discuss in today's session. So let us start. What is ASP.NET Core Web API versioning? See, ASP.NET Core Web API versioning means it is a method, or you can say mechanism, and this mechanism allows us to serve different version of our API to different types of a client, right? So different versions, it will enable the same API to be available in different format. In some, right? So what do you mean by different format? Let us try to understand, right? For example, right? For example, you created one API. You created one API which is going to return list of a product. And in the initial development point of time, let assume you have only two properties are there: the ID, the name, and see only these two things are there: ID and the name. And this is what you are returning to the client. The client who is consuming your API, and for example, for creating a new product, he only needs to provide the name property, and that is a required field. So you will provide that name, a new product is going to be created. So whenever you are returning the data, so you are only returning the ID and name, and accordingly, the client consuming your application. According to right this, your application is being consumed by the client. So now what happened? Now your changes, right? So your application grows, right? You need to enhance the application. You need to enhance the application in the sense. So whatever the existing APIs are there, we need to modify the request parameter. We need to modify the response parameter. Now what is your requirement? Now your requirement is instead of ID and name, now you want to return the price as part of the response. Similarly, when you are creating the new product, instead of taking only the name parameter, you also need to take the price parameter as part of the request body. So if you do these changes to your existing API, the new client who is going to consume your new right consume your API, they don't have any issue. So according to your new signature, they are going to consume their consume the application and consume your services, and their application will work as expected. But what about the old client who is only providing the IT parameter? So who is only providing the name parameter for creating a product? Who is what about the old client who is only retrieving the ID and name, right, from the response object? What about the price? That means that old client who is consuming your application, their application will break, their application will not work. Why will it will not work? Because here you have taken the price parameter, which is you are marking as a required field. The old client, they never consider that price as a parameter while consuming the services. That means that old client application will break or not. Yeah, it will break, right?
Yes, sir.
So
It will
what is
break if you are creating a new parameter as request parameter. But if you are in response, if you are returning the extra one field, then it will be not create any problem.
See, you see, it will not create any problem. That is fine. So no issue, right? See, but thing, right? You need to think in terms of if you are returning something and you are not informing to the client that I am returning this thing, then what will happen?
It will create a
In the
problem.
case, see, in the case, it might not be a issue. But what about the post request? So I'm talking about right from the overall point of view. I'm not talking about from the right get request, post request, put request, or delete request. So what exactly it means? It means if we are doing some modification. For example, right currently you are returning the parameter name as ID, right? So later on, as per your requirement, instead of ID, you are changing that parameter to product ID. Then what will happen?
Yes,
That
sir.
is a
So,
that is a get request only, but you are marking that parameter name is different.
yes, sir, it will create a problem. Sir.
So it will create a problem, na? So
Yes, sir.
basically, whenever you are making some changes in the response body or in the request parameters, you have to inform to the client. And second thing, you cannot inform right today, "Hey, I'm doing these changes and please implement." This is not working in the industry. You have to inform them. You have to give them plenty amount of time for that modification, updation, or changes. And gradually, you need to make that API right obsolete. So how we can do all these things, we'll discuss one by one. So basically, API versioning is a technique to manage multiple versions of an API so that the client can continue use older version while a new version are developed and deployed. So instead of changing the request and response of an existing API, what we need to do, we need to create a newer version of that API. That newer version is going to contain the new in request parameter, new response parameter, and the new client they are going to consume the newer version, old client they are consuming the old version. That means both the existing client as well as the new client, their application will not be impacted. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Right? So what you need to do, you need to publish new version, something like V1, V2, while keeping the old versions operational. Right? Deprecate or remove old version when it is safe, and maintain backward compatibility and reduce the risk of breaking existing clients. So these are the three things that what you need to remove. So whenever you are publishing a new version, don't remove old versions. Remove, you have to deprecate it or remove old version when it is safe. When it is safe means what? Now when no client is using the old version, then you can remove that or delete that old version. That is fine. But always maintain backward compatibility. Let us try to understand this with one example, right? So why do we need web API versioning? So when you deploy web API, multiple clients start using it. Definitely yes. So what is the use of web API? Web API means RESTful services. So once you develop a RESTful service, many different kind of clients start consuming these services. These clients can be a desktop client application, web application, mobile application, any third-party applications, right? So many different kind of clients they start consuming it. So each client is usually built with a specific understanding of the API structure, including the endpoint, request format, and response data. That means each endpoint that is going to be specified with some kind of a API documentation, or you can say contract. Contract means what is the request parameter, what is the response I'm getting, what are the header that what I need to pass. So this information is specific to each endpoint. So then what is the challenge? Business growth is a challenging requirement, and it is a very common thing. A common thing in the sense, so whatever API we developed today, as our business grows and as we gather more right suggestions, feedback from multiple different kind of clients, and it is a very common sense to do some kind of upgradation, enhancement, changes to the existing API. See, if we are creating a new completely new API, that is not an issue. But if you want to enhance the existing functionality, if you want to fix bug by introducing some other parameters, right? So these changes, right, is altered, right? These changes means it is going to alter the data written by the API. It is also going to alter the data, right, which is taking from the client. So changes, this means what we need to maintain backward compatibility. Then see, this part is fine. So once you create a new API, definitely it is going to be consumed by multiple different types of clients. And this part is also fine. So once we right, once our application or business grows, we need to enhance the functionality, we need to update the functionality, we need to fix the bugs, right? That is common. Then what is the challenge? What is the challenge? The challenge is we need to ensure, right? How to, the challenge is we need to ensure without breaking the existing client, we should implement the functionality. If you change the API in a way that is incompatible with how existing clients that expect it to behave. For example, if you rename a field in the response object, if you add some required parameter in the request object, so these changes means what? Now it will break the existing client. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So this is where API versioning becomes crucial. So API version, this is where will come into the picture. So whenever you want to enhance the existing API functionality by modifying some of the response parameter name or by introducing some new required parameter, right, new request parameter, then this is where the API versioning will come into the picture to ensure backward compatibility. So in this case, what will be the ideal scenario? The ideal scenario is keep old versions as it is, introduce new version. Don't touch the old API versions, which is already consuming by multiple clients. Create a new version, and these new versions are going to consume by the new client. Also inform the old client, hey, this API is upgraded. Please try to move from this old version to this new version. This is what we need to clear.
Yes, sir.
Clear or not? Anyone having any question? Why we need WebAPI versioning? Okay or not? Any? Why I don't understand why I'm not getting any response. Yes, no, nothing is there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
it's clear.
yeah.
It's clear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you should participate. So what are the advantages? One is backward compatibility. Yes, right, with API versioning, right, the existing client, they are going to work as expected, their functionality will not break. New client, they are going to use the new API, right? That is avoid breaking changes. And breaking changes means once you do some changes, then it should not break the existing clients. And that is what we are getting with the API versioning. Smooth migration means what? Now currently, once you introduce a new API, so we should not stop the old API as soon as immediately. We need to give plenty amount of time to the existing client to migrate from the old version to new version. So that smooth migration should be there. Multiple client support, definitely yes. So some existing client, they are already consuming our services, and the new client, their requirement something different, and as per their requirement, right, we introduce the new API version. That means multiple client support is also going to be provided. So now what we are going to discuss, what are the different options available to implement API versioning in a ASP.NET code. So there are four options. One is core string versioning. Core string versioning means what? Now, whatever the version, that version information, whether 1.0, 2.0, whatever, that needs to be specified in the core string of the URL. And you already know from where the core string is going to be started. After the URL path, you need to put a question mark. After the question mark, whatever you mentioned, that is going to be the core string. And the core string is always going to be in the form of a key value pair. Right. For example, let assume this is my URL path. After the URL path, whatever I mentioned, this is going to my core string. And here I mentioned the core string as API version 1.0. Now, the existing client, they are going to use this API version 1.0. New client, we need to mention 2.0. And what we need to also provide the backward compatibility support means what? Now, if the user doesn't specify any version, then by default it should fall back and use the API version 1.0. Clear? Because core string is optional. You have to remember this core string is optional, and that is what you need to provide. How? Like this. Clear? So what is core string versioning? Core string versioning means the version information needs to be provided as part of the core string of the URL. Clear? When to use core string versioning, we will discuss later. But how? How that core string is needs to be provided? This is how. So URL path versioning, definitely right. So URL path versioning means that version information needs to be provided in the URL path, like API V1 products. So this means it is targeting the V1 version of the, right. What I can say, V1 version of the product information. So here we are appending the core string in the, right, in the core string is being appended in the URL. Here, as part of the URL path itself, the right version information is being provided. So here, question mark, then we are providing the version information. And here, That version information is part of the URL path. Clear? What is the difference? Difference is that in this case, core string is optional, but here it is mandatory. And here the URL path clearly mention which version of the API going to be served the request. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So two other options are there. That is a header versioning and media type versioning. Header versioning means what? Now you need to create a custom request header, and that custom request header going to mention right which version of the uh, right API is going to serve the request. For example, if you create one header with the name API version 1.0, then that what you need to specify in the request header. Another one is media type versioning. So this is related to your content and negotiation. And so this media type versioning is also called as a accept header. It's also called as a content and negotiation. Why it is called as accept header and content negotiation? Because in this case, using the accept HTTP request header, we need to specify the version. For example, we are specifying application slash JSON, application slash XML. So this is going to tell the web server, hey, this client required the response in this format. That means on demand. Client is specifying in which format he wants the response. That is the reason why it is content negotiation. Along with what type of a response, client can also specify what version of the API to be used to process the request. That is also you can specify like V equals to 10. So here, see this header versioning, metadata versioning, both are going to do the same thing. Only difference here we are creating a custom header. Here we are using the built-in accept header. Clear?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Right, so there are four different ways to implement. Let us proceed and see how we can implement this in our application. So first of all, let me go ahead and create a new project. So once we create the project, what we need to do, we need to install this package. This package Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.MVC.versioning. So this package which enable the API versioning for your application, whether you implement this core string, URL path header, media type, right, whatever type of versioning you implement in your project, this is the package which is going to provide the support for API versioning. So first thing is always first. So what we need to do, we need to install this package. So you can install this package using package manager for solution or using PMC command. So let me go ahead and install this using the PMC command. So that package was installed. So once the package was installed, now what we need to do? We need to provide some read multiple API version. So basically we are going to create a two get method and two post method for the same API. So in this case that version 1, that let assume V1, return the basic product information, that is the ID and the name. So that is what it is written. In version 2, right, it returns the extended product information like ID, name, and the new price proposed. So these three things it is going to return. Similarly, in version 1 post method, it accepts only the name of the product which is going to be used to create a new product. And in version 2, what exactly it is going to do? It is going to accept both name and price. Clear?
Yeah, clear,
Clear?
sir.
Right? So what exactly it means? It means now when we create the product object, let assume, so when we create the product object, or you can say product database table, at that time we are only storing the ID and name. Later, as the business grows, we are introducing the price property also, price column also. So as we are introducing the price column later, so later version of the API, they needs to include that price column. So let us proceed and understand this thing. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to define my product entity. So go ahead and create a folder called model. So this is going to my models folder. So within this models folder, I'm going to create my product entity. So this product entity initially doesn't contains the price information. Later it will include the price information. So here you can see initially it contain ID and name. Later this price is being added. And again, as you can see, as I'm adding this property later, so I'm making this as a nullable type, so it will not break, right, if the user doesn't provide any information. And this is for our internal purpose. And if you are developing API, then that API contract is not going to define by this product model. For that contract purpose, we are going to make use of a DTO, right? So instead of using this one, so what we are going to do, we are going to make use of a DTO. So this is going to my product model. This is my initial model, initial property, which is there. Later on, I have added this property to store the product information. So the existing client, they are going to deal with only this ID and name. New client, they are going to deal with all these three properties. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah,
Great.
clear.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create right two request object and a two response object, right? So what are the request objects? So basically product create request v1. So this will only contains the name, and the product create request v2. It is going to contain the name and the price. So the existing client, right? For existing client, for creating a new request object, they are going to use this DTO, which is going to contain only the name property. The new client, they are going to use this version where it is going to contain the name and the price. Similarly, in the product response V1, it will contain both ID and name, and product response V2, it is going to contain ID, name, and price. So the V1 version, right, for your better understanding, right, what I mentioned the version information name in the TTO itself. Product create request V1 means what? The V1 version of the API, they are going to use this one. V2 version, they will use this one. Similarly, for response V1 version, I'm going to use DTO, this DTO. For V2 response, this DTO. So for each one, you can create a separate DTO. Time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a single DTO class, single CS class file. And inside that class file, I'm going to create all these four DTOs. But in real time, you should have a separate class file for each DTO. But here, for to save time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a single class file called product DTO. And inside that DTO class file, I'm going to create all these four right DTOs. See, so this is my product create request DTO name, which is not a nullable type. Product response v1. So this is going to return ID and name. So this is the new version which is introduced later, which is taking the name and the price, both are mandatory field, and it is also returning the ID, name, and a price. So here you can see in database, we are marking this as a nullable type. Because why? Because already some data is there. Later on, if you are adding any new property or new column, you have to definitely give that as a nullable type. Otherwise, it will give you error. But while I'm dealing with the client, right, who is going to work with the V2 version, it is mandatory to provide the price column. Then what about this existing client? For existing client, that price is going to be default value 0, right? So let us proceed and see how we can implement this thing. So first one, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to show you how to implement the API versioning using core string. Core string means what? That version information needs to be appended as part of the core string of the URL path, something like this. For example, API product version v1, API product version v2. So when it is version 1.0, 1.0 means the first version is going to be served. 2.0 means the second version of the API is going to be served, right? So this API version, based on this core string, we need to decide what is the version number, and based on the version number, we are going to serve the response. So how does it going to be work? Now, when the client makes a request, the ASP.NET Core Web API framework looks for the version parameter in the core string. Right? That means what? Now, when this request comes, the API version will right framework, ASP.NET Core framework will check this API version core string parameter. And based on this parameter value, the framework determine which controller and which action method, which version of the controller or which version of the action method should handle this request. So internally, if the version information is 1.0, it will serve the version 1 endpoint. For 2.0, version 2 endpoint. If the version is not specified, right? For example, this query string parameter is missing. Then if you configure the default version, that will come into the picture. Otherwise, it will return some kind of a error. So I'm also going to show you how you can also specify the default version for your application. So let us proceed and see how we can configure. So for this purpose, we have already, right, what I can say, we have already installed that package, that is Microsoft.ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET Core.MVC.virtual. So this package is required. So next what I'm going to do, I'm going to configure the versioning information. So let me proceed step by step. So this is my program class. So let me first configure this one. So what I'm doing here, so I'm registering my controller and I'm disabling camel case naming convention. So you already know this statement because in every and each example we are using this one. Next, what I need to do, I need to enable API versioning, right? So how we can do this? Let us try to option. So it is a four-step process. Let me explain to you. So in this case, to enable API versioning, what you need to do, you need to use this add API versioning services. So this add API versioning services enable or it add the versioning into the dependency injection container so that whenever the request comes, so this will be used by API framework to determine which version is specified in the query string, right? For example, here you can see I have provided for statement. Let us try to understand what is the use of each statement. So assume default version when unspecified. So what exactly it means? It means, right, do you want to use the default version when the version information is not specified? The value is going to be true and false. If you specify this value to true, what it means if the client doesn't specify any version information, right, it doesn't matter whether he's not right, doesn't matter whether you are using query string, URL path, header or media type, whichever type of versioning mechanism you are using, no matter. If the client doesn't specify, do you want to use the default version? Yes, I want to use. Then you have to set this value to true. No, I don't want to use any default version. Instead, it should return bad request, right? Then in that case, what you need to do, you need to set this property value to false. So this statement is clear,
Yes, sir.
right? Then the second one, this is the default version. See, if you are specifying this version to true, then this is very, very important. See, if you are specifying that I need to mentor, right, I need to support the default version. If the user doesn't specify, then which one is the default version? Whether 1.20, 2.0, 1.1, 2.1, whatever version. So that what you need to specify using this API version constructor. So here I'm specifying the API version, major version number 1, minor version number 0. So that is what I'm going to use as the default version. So default of 1.0, that is going to be used as the default version whenever the user doesn't specify. And this will only come into the picture when you set this value to true. If it is false, doesn't make sense to provide this one. Why? Because you are not supporting default version. If you are not supporting default version, then why should you specify this one? Getting my point?
So in this case, 1.0 is the default version.
1.0 is the default one because here we are specifying this is the major version number, this is the minor version number. If you want to provide some kind of a patch update, that is also possible, right? So for example, I want to provide this is, so this string, no. So this two is provided, major version number and the minor version number. Yeah. So this is going to be the major version number and minor version. Okay. So the third one is report API version. For example, right, if your application going to support multiple version of the API, or if some of the version is going to be depreciated, right? So in that case, do you want to inform this information to the client as part of your response header? Yes. As part of my response header, I want to tell the client, so these are the supported version and these are the depreciated version. So this information, if you want to inform the client, then in that case, you have to use this a report API version. I will also show you how this information is going to be returned to the client as part of the response header. Clear? So these three things are what I can say often by default false. If it is true, then you have to specify this thing. By default false. If you want to inform this information to the client, then you have to set this to true. So in this case, this is mandatory. So this is mandatory. And this first three statement, whatever we have written, this is going to be common irrespective of type of versioning you are using. Whether you are using URL path, query string, media type, header, versioning, right? These three statements are going to be common. Only the statement which is going to vary from type to type, this API version reader. So this API version reader will tell the framework, hey, Mr. Framework, please read the version information from the query string, or please read the version information from the URL path, please read the version information from the header, custom header, what is the header name, that what you also need to specify. Please read the version information from the media type accept header, and what is the right key name, that what you need to specify. So this is the parameter, or you can say this is the parameter which is going to tell from where to read the version information. And in this case, we are specifying query string API version header. Means what? It will tell the framework, hey, Mr. Framework, please read the version information from the query string. And what should be the query string name? That what you need to specify here. So in this case, that query parameter which is going to contain the version information is nothing but API hyphen version. And for this query parameter, you can specify 1, 2, 1.0, V1, V2, whatever, how you are going to maintain that what you need to specify. Clear?
Yeah, clear, sir.
So this is how you need to configure your versioning information as part of your API versioning configuration. So with these changes, next what I need to do, I need to create the controller and I need to use. So in this case, let me go ahead and create a controller. And this controller is going to contain 4 action methods. Two action method for the get request, 2 action method for the post request. One action method targeting V1 version, another action method targeting V2 version. So let us proceed and see. So in this case, 2 attribute I'm going to make you understand. One is API version and another one is map. See, if you are not using this map to API version, that is also fine. So if you are not using, then what you need to do, you have to specify this version information independently, like this one. API version 1.0. So this is API version 2.0, something like you need to specify. But what is the industry standard? That what I'm going to show you. So according to industry standard, what you need to do, whatever all versions are going to be supported by your controller, that what you need to specify using the API version attribute. Now, so as I mentioned, this API version 1.0 and 2.0 means what? Means this controller, whatever we created here, it is going to provide support for version 1.0 and 2.0. Clear? So using this API version attribute, we can specify which version being supported by the controller. Clear or not?
Yeah, clear.
Yes.
Right. So now this API is going to be supported by 1.0 or 2.0. That's what you need to specify by using this map to API version. So as I'm using map to API version 1.0, that means this get v1 method is being supported by API version 1.0. Similarly, as I have mentioned map to API version 2.0, this method is being supported by 2.0. Similarly, this is mapped to API version 1.0. This is going map to API version 2.0. See, this API version attribute you can apply it at the controller level, as well as you can also apply it at the action method level. But this map to API version, you cannot apply it at the controller level. It is specifically for the action method level. So if you don't want to use this version, that is fine. Right? For example, I don't want to use this one. Okay, no issue. So, right, in that case, what you need to do, you need to specify, right, that API version attribute, right, everywhere. For example, I need to specify API version. So here 1.0, here 1.0. Similarly, I need to specify this 2.0. This is going to my API version 2.0. This is going to be 2.0. Clear?
Yes.
So which version of the API going to be supported by this? That what you need to specify. That is 2.0. So which version? 1.0. So which version? 1.0. So 1.0, 2.0, 1.0, and the 2.0. That means if you look at the implementation, right, for the get one method, I'm only see in this case, your database might be containing ID name initially. Later you include this price column. For this get V1 method, I'm not bothering about that price column because the client who is consuming V1 version, they are not aware about the price information. That is the reason why here you can see I'm using this product response V1, and this product response V1 contain only ID and name. Similarly, for get V2, I'm returning all the data. So why? Because in this case, all the informations are there. ID, name, price, everything is going to be there. So instead of this one, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make use of this product object. Right? So this is going to my product object. ID, right, list of a products, not list of a products. So what I need to do, so this is products V2. So the response is going to be V2. And here also I need to store the price column. Price equals to P dot price. So why I'm getting this error? Double nullable. If this is null, then what I need to store? 0. Right? So this is what I need to return. Clear? Right? So
Yeah.
this is to be right for V1 version. What I need to do? I need to create product object, new product, new ID, and in the product response V1, I need to return that one. And for this V2, again, I need to create this one. And here I'm taking the price. Clear, guys? Okay, so with these changes, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the actual version, API version 1.0, 2.0. So let me, so this is going to be, see, I have shown you both options, but I'm going with the industry standard. Industry standard means API version at the rate what I can say controller level and map to version at the action method level. Clear? But if you want, without using this map to API version, you can directly use this API version at the action method level. That is also fine. Clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me copy this one and I paste it here.
So can we use the API version as 1.1, 1.2?
Okay? Yeah, what is your query?
So can we use the API version as 1.1 and 1.2 like that?
Yeah, see, that is up to you now. Suppose you want to provide this is 1.1, fine. 2.1, fine. That is not an issue. But in this case, what will be the problem? If the user doesn't specify any version information, then that version information what you configured here is not available. So that is the reason why I have provided this as 1.0. So that is, if you want to give, for example, I'm giving 2.1. So I'm giving 2.2. That is fine. Clear?
Yes.
right? So whatever version you want to give, you can give, right? But again, this is going to be very difficult to understand. So why I'm saying difficult to understand? Because of the Swagger, right? So that is the reason why I'm giving 1.0, 2.0, 1.0, and 2.0. Why? Because whenever you are using this API version functionality, then by default Swagger will not work. Let me run the application and show you whether Swagger is working or not. Why it is not working? That is fine. I will show you. Right? So you can see Swagger is not working. Okay. So now what I need to do, I need to test this functionality. 7.70. See, in this case, what I'm doing here, you can see I'm calling this API products. So what is the URL path? API products. API products, if I'm not providing any version information, then by default, which version will come into the picture? 1.0. So in 1.0, so which is the get method? This one. So in this case, what information it is returning? ID and name. So let me run this one. So ID and name I'm getting. Right? Clear? Now I need to specify the API version. So if you need to specify the API version, for example, I need to specify 1.0. Then in this case, we will get this one. Now I need to specify 2.0. I'm getting the different output. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That means based on the API version attribute, I'm getting the appropriate response or not. The client who is consuming 1.0, they will work with the previous version. The client who is working with the latest one, they will use 2.0. Clear?
So if you are not mentioned the version, it will take default or something.
Yeah, that is what I have shown you the first example now. So if you do not specify, then what is the default version here?
Okay, 1 point. Okay.
1.0, what information you are returning? Only ID and a name.
Name. Okay.
Only getting ID and name. Clear?
Yes.
So this is how it is working now. Now, if you look at this, Swagger is not working. Why Swagger is not working? See. So conflicting method path combination get API products from action P1 and P2. So for Swagger, right, he assumed that these two methods are same. For example, how to access this get V1, what is the URL path, excluding the core string. So Swagger doesn't know about the core string parameter. Swagger know only about the URL path. So in this case, what is the path to access this method? API products and get API product. Similarly, how we can access this method? Get API products. Yes or no? Because this action method name, right? This action method name is not part of the, right, what I can say, contract. So only we are storing this one, API products, get, post, put, patch, and delete. So in this case, how to access this method? Now, you can access this method using this one, get API slash product. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no? How you can access this V1 method? Get API product. Now, how you can access this V2 version? Same, get API products. So when, see, we know this is going to be handled by version 2.0. This is going to be handled by version 1.0. What Swagger doesn't know. For Swagger, what is the path to access this endpoint? Get API product. What is the path to access this endpoint? Get API product. So for the same URL path, we are having two different action method. So it is a conflict, and conflict means for Swagger it is a error. Similarly, for this post version, how we can access this one? Now we can access this one by using, right, a post, right, API products, and the same in this case also, post API product. Then again for the post version, the two action methods satisfy the right scenario. So that is again, this is a conflict. As there are two conflicts, right? So it is throwing this error. First of all, it is showing get API product. Once you resolve this one, then again it will show you post API product, right? So how we can overcome this information? Now for this purpose, what we need to do, right? We need to create a separate document, right? Currently, Swagger generating the default document. Swagger generating the default document which can be accessible here, right? Swagger V1 version. So now what we need to do, we need to generate a different documents. One document for the V1 version, another document for the V2 version. For that purpose, what we need to do, we need to configure the same thing. I mean, the default configuration, whatever provided by Swagger, that what we need to override. So how we can do this? Let us try to observe. So first of all, what you need to do, you need to create a two Swagger document. One is for API version 1.0, another is for API version 2.0. So this information is for the display purpose. In the UI, it is going to provide one drop-down list where it will mention API version 1.0, API version 2.0. So first of all, you need to create two documents, one for 1.0, another for 2.0. Clear? What is the step one? Step one, for each version, we need to create a separate Swagger document. How to create the Swagger document? By using this Swagger doc constructor. Clear? For the first parameter, you need to provide the version number. The second parameter is the OpenAPI info object. And using this OpenAPI info object, you need to specify two things. One is what is the title and what is the version number. This is human readable information. And this information will be visible in the Swagger document as a drop-down list. The first statement is clear. You have to create a two Swagger document for two different versions. If you are having three versions, again you need to add another. Clear?
Yeah, clear.
Yes.
Right. Next, right, what is the main issue currently? The main issue is currently that conflict. Conflict means a two endpoint, right? Two endpoint satisfying the same request path. So in that case, to avoid this or to overcome this conflict by the Swagger, what we need to do, we need to tell the Swagger API, hey, Mr. Swagger, if you are getting two same right action method, if you are getting two same action method for the particular request, then please pick the first one. Don't throw error, pick the first one. So that is what we are telling here. So resolve conflict action. If you are having multiple actions which satisfying the given request path, then we are telling the right Swagger to pick the first one right among the two things, right? For example, in this case, right, this is get V1, this is get V2, two satisfied. Okay, no issue. Please check, pick this one because the path, that action method is going to be signature is going to be same, right? That what we need to tell. So in this case, we are resolving the conflict between identical route. If two routes are identical, two action methods are identical, which can solve a particular or a single request, then from this two, to avoid the error, we need to pick the first one. If you want, you can pick the last one. That is up to you only. Clear? The second statement, what I'm doing here, is that clear?
Yeah, yeah,
Actually,
clear, sir.
Pranaya, V1 and V2 are different, so there can be conflict.
Sorry?
V1 and V2, they are different.
See, in this
So
case,
the
you just tell me each action method as part of the URL or route action method name are we putting as part of the URL path or whatever the request contract we are defining, the endpoint we are defining, are we taking this action method name as part of the rate endpoint signature?
no,
So only API product. So how you can access this endpoint? Forget about this
yeah,
map
okay,
equation and all
yeah,
these
yeah,
things.
okay, okay,
So
yeah, yeah,
you can access this using this get API product. You can also access this one using get API product. See, in real time, what will happen now? We cannot provide, right? In real time, we cannot provide different endpoint, right? If the endpoint, if the API signature is different, then this will not be an issue. So we want to keep the same endpoint, but we want to serve a different version. That is what our intention. We should not include this get V1 or get V2 as part of the URL path, right? Clear or not?
yeah, 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 clear.
Next, right, first you have to create two Swagger document. First, we need to pick the first endpoint whenever there are multiple right action method matching a single route. then filter an endpoint based on the API version. Then what we need to do, right? As part of the request, right? When the request coming, right, or right, whenever the Swagger is generating, then each action method, right? Each action method or each, right? What I can say, uh, what exactly I can say, each action method or controller, they are decorated with this API version attribute or map to API version attribute. So based on this API version or a map to API version attribute, we need to pick all the endpoint version informations, right? For example, so based on this API version attribute and map to API version attribute, I can get V1 version, get V2 version, post V1 version, right? Post V2 version, all this information I can gather, right? So here, if you look at this two inclusion predicate, so this is going to be delegate. So here it is taking two information. One is the version, that is nothing but which version information you want to show, 1.0, 2.0, because when the Swagger is open, by default 1.0 is selected, that is the version number. Apart from this, from the drop down, you can also select a 2.0. When you select a 2.0, that 2.0 will be stored inside this version parameter. API description, nothing but it is going to give the information about the action method, each action method. What is the action method name? What is the HTTP method, request parameter, version number, response object, right? All this information you can access by using this API description object. And from this API description object, you need to write to fetch the method information. If the method is not file available, then return false, which is ideally not the scenario because every method information you can access. Right. Then here I'm writing two statements. One is method version, another one is control version. So basically, what we need to do, some of the action method, they might be decorated with the this API version attribute. Some of the controller you are applying this API version attribute, right? Then in that case, what we need to do, we need to fetch the action method information based on the controller attribute. For example, if I apply this API version at the controller level. So when we apply attribute at the controller level means what? Means that attribute will be applicable to all the independent action methods. Say all the action methods that are present within that controller is applicable. Similarly, if I'm applying, for example, this is my control one, right, where I'm applying this one here. In another controller, I'm applying this attribute at the action method level. So basically what I'm doing here, I'm fetching all the method informations from the controller level as well as accessing all the right method informations, right, from the action method level. So once I access, right, once I get, then what I'm doing here, I'm joining. Joining means what? Now currently you can see this is get V1, get V2, post V1 and post V2. So this four action method is going to be available here. And so this four right action method, it is going to available. And then, right, I'm applying this distinct attribute so that I should not have any confusion because some of the action method needs to be applicable based on the API version attribute at the controller level. The same can be available based on the map to API version attribute applied at the action method level. So if both are appearing here, I don't want both, I want a unique. So that is the reason why I apply this distinct. So in this case, it is going to return me all the action method having all the version information. And I'm not interested for all the version. So which version I'm interested? The version which the user is selected. So out of all versions, only the version which is specified 1.0 and 2.0, at least I'm returning here. So these three statements are going to do this thing. So basically, first create a two-Swagger document 1.0, 2.0, resolve the conflict and filter endpoint based on the API version. So whichever version in API endpoint to be read. So in which version, right? That what we are doing here. And finally, we need to configure the Swagger UI. So this Swagger UI means what? Right? It is going to show that in user interface, right? At user interface, one user interface you can access using Swagger 1.0. So currently you can see this is Swagger v1 swagger.json. So this is one endpoint which you can access. Similarly, now I'm not going with this default one. I'm going to create my version Swagger 1.0, Swagger 2.0, and this is what the textual name. So let me show you all this thing practically and show you whether it is working or not. So now let me go ahead and modify the program. See, so we have discussed this thing. This is fine. We have already discussed. This is fine. So now I'm creating two Saga document. One is for 1.0 version. Another one is for 2.0 version. So this is where I'm resolving the conflict so that if two endpoint satisfy with the given route, so we don't want to throw any kind of error. We want to pick the first one. So this is where it is going to decide which endpoints to be appear in which version. Right. So here you can say extract API version attribute applied on the action method. Here extract API version attribute applied on the controller class. Then what I'm doing here, I'm combining this method version with the controller version and applying the distance so that I will get the unique version. And then whatever the version user is selected, then that version information we are only returning from the UI. Then if the environment is development, right, this information I don't want to expose in the production. It is only for the development environment. So what I'm doing here, if the environment is development, I want to show the Swagger UI. And then this Swagger UI is going to represent two Swagger endpoint. One can be accessible using 1.0. And this 1.0 and 2.0, what we specified, that must be same as this 1.0 and 0.0. Clear? Okay. So let me run the application and see whether that Swagger UI currently working fine or not. See, API version 1.0, API version 2.0. See, this is API version 1, API rate products and API products. So that is what you need to understand. So here you can select 1.0 or you can select a 2.0. Clear?
So,
Right? For example, I'm going to create another test controller. Right? So let me create a class called test controller. Okay. So let me copy this one. Right? So test controller API test. Right? So in this case, let us assume I don't have this 2.0. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Uh, is it possible in 1.0 some method available and if we upgrade version that time some method not available?
See, you have to remember this versioning will only come into the picture when you are creating a new version. If one version is there and if that is not available, so for example, right, let me go ahead and create this endpoint. See, and here I'm giving this endpoint as footman. Clear? Clear? So this is available in V1 and not available in V2. So why should I declare this one? Clear? So this means what? Now this method is available in both versions. So what is the right? So whatever your question, right? Do you think that one API is available in V1 and not available in V2 means what?
All method available in both versions. Yes.
Yeah, one version means what? So that is what I'm asking. So in which version it is available and in which version it is not available?
Suppose in 1.0 I have created one method that is common method and
Hmm.
2.0 I not need to again duplicate code.
See, first of all, you just tell me. So when this API versioning coming into the picture?
For enhancement.
So whenever you want a different version of the same API, if you don't need that new version, no need. For example, right? For example, I don't require this 2.0, right? For example, you don't need this 2.0 API version. That's fine. So you can comment this one. So now this is applicable to both the version. If they specify 1.0, right, you can remove this one. That's fine. So now in your right, so this is not related to post V1 or V2. As I have declared this one 1.0 and 2.0. So using 1.0 or using 2.0, they can access this one. Clear?
Yes, sir.
And there, I don't see any situation or scenario where that using 1.0 I can access, but using 2.0 I cannot access. That is the depreciation scenario. So you have to depreciate that endpoint. And you have to delete that endpoint. So that is fine. So this is how you can create, right? So put get and then clear. As I have declared this one here, so it is applicable to all the endpoint, right? For example, now what I'm doing here, API version 1. So I'm not declaring here API version 1. So I declare API version 1 here. So declare API version 1 here. And then I declare API version 2.0 here. Okay. So now run the application and see. This is also going to be work. See API API products and API products 1.0. See, this is 2.0. Clear? If you put that API version, every action method is available. But if you want to specify that this is available for it, so you can see this put one. So I have not specified any version attribute. So it is not available for any particular version. So this is available for API version 1.0. This is available for 2.0. And this is available for 1.0. So for 1.0, right, those two methods are available. And for 2.0, this method is available. Clear?
So that make a summary of what is available in each version.
Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right? Any particular scenario you take into consider that I want this method to be available in this particular version, not available in that particular. Simple. You have to decorate that attribute directly at action method level. For example, I'm not putting this V1 here. So you can say this is not available as part of a V1, right, and as part of a V2 also. Clear? Now you want to make this V1 available only as part of a V2, I mean version 2. Okay, fine. So what you need to do, you need to decorate this action method with a API version 2.0. So with this, so this put method will now available from the V2 onwards. Say V1, say get post, and for V2, get post. Clear?
Yes, sir. So API versioning, that attribute and map to the versioning, it behaves same, right? If we
Same. See, this not same. So this API version, for example, you want to write if you apply this one here, API version, sorry, 1.0. 1.0 means it can be applicable at the controller level. So once it apply on the controller level, what exactly it means? Now this API version attribute is available here, available here, available here, as well as available here.
okay.
Clear?
If we don't
And if,
give any version in the put class, in the put HTTP put verb, so it will show in Swagger, right, sir?
sorry.
So, like in the line number 23, this put V1, there is no versioning mentioned. So, right now, if we check the Swagger, so this will available in version 1. As
Yes.
it is.
So yes. Now let's see. See, in V1 this put method is available. In V2 this is not available.
Oh,
Clear?
yes.
So once you apply this, it will be applicable at the controller level. Now you might go one question, sir, if I'm applying this one, So this is available here. This is also available here. But here again, this API version attribute is there. Again here, so there might be a conflict. That means that same applicable twice. Then why it is not showing 2 times? Because we have applied at a distinct method here.
Okay.
Right? So that only one time that API endpoint will be visible. So control and this map to API version that is only available at the action method level. This one available at the controller as well as action method level. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. Right. So next, what you need to do, you need to understand when should you use when you want to keep URLs clean and avoid embedding version directly into the URL path. That means what? Now, if you are developing the API, implementing the API versioning, and you don't want that API version information as part of the URL path, I mean that path you don't want, rather than you want to append that as part of the core string, then in that case you can go with this API core string versioning. And another thing is that if you want to demonstrate these things quickly or testing purpose, right? So that you can put the URL directly in the browser and test whether it is working fine or not. Then in that case, you can go with this API versioning. Why? Because in the core string, you can change from 1.0 to 2.0 and easily you can test this functionality. So when backend compatibility is important and you want to support multiple API version on the same route base, right? For the same URL route, you want to provide multiple API support, API versioning support, and in that case, you can go with this one. So mostly this is for the, right, what I can say, internal API or the development of point of time, we are going with this core string versioning. But if you are going to follow the RESTful design approach, RESTful pattern, then this is not the ideal scenario. It is ideal. So the core string is ideal for simple and internal scenarios. Simple and internal scenarios, right? For complex scenarios, for following the complete RESTful functionality, this is not ideal. Clear, guys? Clear or not?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So let me do one more thing, right? I'm going to simplify this method so that you should not have any, right, confusion. So this is my endpoint. So this map to version API controller attribute directly I'm applying here. So this is my API version 1. This is my API version 1.0. So this is going to be API controller 2.0. And this is going to be 2.0. So I'm simplifying these things, right? So that you should not have any issue.
Because it's not industrial standard, you said.
Right? Standard means, right, uh, that is fine, right? But if you guys are facing some difficulty, then this is the best approach. Starting with this one is fine, right? So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the other approach. Other approach means the second approach, that is the URL path. URL path means what? The version information is going to be part of the URL path. See, guys, remember in this case, so this is nothing but your URL path. After the question mark, whatever API information, API version you provided, right? For example, after the question mark, whatever I provided, that is going to be my core string, right? That is going to be my core string. But before the question mark, this is going to my URL path. Now, as part of the URL path, I want to provide it the version information. So how we can do this thing? So how we can do this thing means I need something like this: API v1 product, API v2 product. So this is how we need to implement API versioning. How we can do this? Let us proceed and see. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, first of all, we need to use the URL path versioning. So what changes you need to do? Go to the program.cs class file. And this is currently what we are configuring. We are configuring the core string. So instead of core string, what I need here, I need the URL path versioning. So how you can do this? Now URL segment version reader. So by default, it is going to be in this format: API v whatever the version number and whatever the path. So for example, this is going to be API v1 product. right? And this V1, 1 means this is going to be 1.0, 2.0. That is what it is going to be specified. So let us proceed and see. The first changes is you have to use this URL segment API version reader instead of a core string API version reader. So only changes instead of a core string, I'm using this URL segment. Clear?
Yes.
Clear or right? Then the second change is what we need to do. We need to modify the products controller. Go to the products controller, and here we need to update. See API v version dot API version and the product. So this v, whatever the version number the user is specified, 1.0, 2.0, whatever, right? That what it is going to be replaced dynamically. So this is going to be the version number, and accordingly, whichever version number the user is specified, that API is going to be executed. Clear?
Yes.
Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So only changes that this is what we need to implement, right? Route parameter, and here we need to specify. So with these changes, let me run the application and see whether it is working fine or not. So here, what is the version number I need to specify? 1.0. See, I'm getting this data. But in this case, if I'm going to specify 2.0, it is also working. See, 1.0 and 2.0. I'm getting the data as expected, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So this is going to be 1.0. This is going to be 2.0. This is going to be 1.0. This is going to be 2.0. Clear, guys?
Yeah.
So what changes we have done? So now, right, instead of using core string parameter, we are mentioning the version information directly as part of the URL path. How? Now by using a placeholder that version.api version. So what is the API version? That what the user is specified in the URL. For example, let me show you this thing practically. For example, uh, suppose I'm calling this one. See, in this case, I'm passing API v 1.0. So this 1.0 is nothing but your version number. So I'm getting the data. So instead of 1.0, I'm passing 2.0. So I'm getting the data as expected. Clear? So this version 1.0, 2.0, whatever we specify, that what we can achieve by using this version.api version placeholder. Right? Clear?
Okay.
Yes.
So this version.api version, what we specify, that will be replaced with this. So here I'm applying the route attribute directly at the controller level, assuming all these controller having the version API version attribute. If not, then what you can do is you can apply this route attribute at the individual action method level also. That is also possible. So let me copy this code and update this one. Okay. Right? When to use this approach? Right. So when you want the API version to be explicitly and visible in the endpoint URL, if you want to ensure what version, right, the user is requested for directly as part of the URL or endpoint, right, URL path, then you need to use this approach. And this is basically useful whenever you are developing some public APIs or the APIs which are going to be consumed by some third parties. Mostly the public API which can be consumed by anyone, right? For that purpose, you can make use of this one so that explicitly they understand which version of the API they are interested in. Clear?
Yes.
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 Now the next approach, what we are going to discuss the right using HTTP header. So basically, what we need to do is we'll create a custom header. We are not going to modify the URL. URL is going to be same for all verse V1 and V2. no version information as part of the URL path, no version information as part of the core string, right? That version information we are going to specify by using a custom, it's a custom header. Mostly that header name I'm going to write mostly use as API version, and using this API version header, we are going to implement versioning. See, in this case, when the client send a request, that request is going to contain one HTTP header, that is API version. And based on this API HTTP header version, API version HTTP header value, the framework can decide whether to execute version 1 or version 2 or whichever action method that what needs to be executed. Let us see how we can do this. So first of all, what we need to do, we need to register that reader. So where we need to register the reader? So we need to register the reader here, API version reader. So to read the API version information from the header. So not core string. So if you are reading from core string, you have to use core string. If you are reading from URL segment, URL. If you are reading from the header, you have to use header. So in this case, if you are using header, then what will be the header name? Which header value needs to be read? That what we need to specify by using this API version. So that parameter what we specified here, this is the header name. So whatever parameter we specified to this constructor, that parameter is nothing but the same name that what the client needs to pass while calling the or while consuming the API. In this case, that parameter name is going to be API version. So as we are using this API version, then what we need to do? So again, do I need to specify this thing? No. So in this case, our API is going to be free. Our endpoint is going to be free from any kind of right, what I can say, uh, versioning information as part of the core string or URL path. So no information is provided as part of the core string. No information is provided as part of the URL path. Now let me run the application and show you. See, for V1, these are the two endpoints. For V2, these are the two different endpoints. So this functionality, right? This functionality you cannot test using Swagger or browser, because in this case we need to set, right? In this case we need to specify, right? We need to specify the HTTP header. So for this purpose, I'm going to make use of I'm going to make use of Postman, right? In the Postman, we need to set the API version. So let me go ahead, API. So let me remove this version information from the core string. And here, I'm going to use a header 1.0, 2.0, whatever version you want to execute. So I want to execute to 1.0. So call this one. I'm getting the data. I want to execute to 2.0. Call this one. If I'm not specifying anything, then by default, which one is the default version? 1.0. So that version data it is going to return. Clear? Now, if I want to set this value to false, then what will happen? See, API version unspecified and API version is required but was not specified. Bad request. Clear? And if I specify this one, then this is going to return the data. Clear or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the third approach to implement. So when to use this approach? Now, when you want to keep URLs clean and stable without exposing version info in the route. So basically, in the route, either in the URL path or in the core string, if you don't want to specify the version information, then you need to go with this header versioning, right? When clients can easily send custom HTTP header, right? So if the client can easily pass the custom HTTP header, then they can use this one. So when you separate versioning from resource identification, so basically the endpoint, whatever we created, that is only for the resource identification, not for the version information. So if you want to separate that resource identification and versioning information separately, right, then you need to use this header versioning. So in the earlier two cases, in the core string and in the URL path, that not only resource identification, but the version information is also right, included as part of the URL, which is going to do two different jobs. So now with this header versioning, we are clearly separated resource identification and version information. So these are the real-time scenarios, or you can say how you can decide whether which approach you need to use. You need to take these three into consideration. Clear?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So the last one is a content negotiation. That is the media type versioning. It is very similar. It is very similar to your header versioning. But in this case, instead of using a custom HTTP header, what we need to do? We need to make use of, right, the built-in accept HTTP header. So using the accept HTTP header, we are specifying what type of a response we need. That is whether we need the application slash JSON for JSON response, application slash XML for XML response. Not only specifying the which type of data you need as part of response, but also you can specify what version of the data you need. Whether you need version 1.0, version 2.0, that what you can also specify using the accept headers. That is nothing but media type versioning. Media type versioning means specifying the version information using the accept HTTP header. So how in this case it will work? Now in this case it will inspect, the framework will inspect the accept header and it will figure out what version information is specified. If it is a 1.0, then 1. Version API endpoint is going to be executed. For 2.0, 2. Endpoint is also going to be executed. So let us proceed and see how we can do this thing. So first of all, we need to enable media type versioning. So the only changes, this is the only changes. So here what I'm saying, now I'm specifying media type version reader. So in this case, this v what we specified, that is nothing but your parameter name. So in the core string, after specifying the in the accept header, after specifying the application slash whatever the key name you specified, v equals to 2.0. So this is going to be v or version or vi or whatever the name you want to provide here, that what you need to specify. Clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, so that is what I have specified here. So with these changes, do I need to make any changes in my controller? No. Why? Because this is similar to header versioning. Header versioning, earlier we are using custom headers. Now we are using built-in accept header. So there is no changes from our controller action method. So with these changes, now let me run the application and see whether it is working fine or not. So in this case, what we need to do, we are not going to use this one. We are going to make use of authorization header. So accept application slash JSON, then v equals to 1.0. Right? So now let me run the application, see 1.0 response I'm getting. I'm going to invoke that 2.0 version, and this time I'm going to get. So version 2.0 is not working. Why it is not working?
Cool.
Any issue? Thank you. Okay. So two times we are specifying, that is the reason why it is not working, right? So now you have to uncomment this one and select this one. Clear? So now send the request. Still it is not working. It is fine. Why it is not working? It's one. Really, it should work. No changes from the controller. Why it is not working? Okay. Parameter name field. If we are not specifying, that is also fine. Mhm. If a version not specified, accept render determinable. Yeah.
That in accept you have given the application just in time.
That's not with the issue. If a version is not set, so parameter name view. That is this fine.
HTTP request is not having header.
That is not the issue. Version, if a version unspecified, but we specified. Okay, let me do one more thing. So here it is working, right? I don't know why it is not working with, right, what I can say, uh, Postman, but with Fiddler this is working. So if I specify 1.0, I'm getting ID and name. If I specified here 2.0, then I'm getting all these information. I don't know why it is not working with Postman. Clear?
Yes.
Right? So this is how you need to work. And this is right, guys. Remember when to use this approach. Now, basically, whenever you want to strictly follow the content, right? I mean, strictly follow the REST principle. Then, in that case, you need to use this app. So, basically, this is another way to implement a header versioning. But in this case, instead of using that built-in, instead of using a custom header, we are going to make use of this accepted. So this is all about API versioning. Tomorrow we are going to start, right? Two sessions I will take for discussing minimal API. So tomorrow we will discuss minimal API. Clear?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
sure. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
So anyone having any question, they can ask me. So this is very, very important API versioning, and minimal API is also important. If you are developing some kind of a small APIs, some straightforward functionalities, then minimal API is fine. And we'll discuss all or you can say everything related to minimal API. What is minimal, starting from what is minimal API to implement authentication, authorization, right? Everything we are going to discuss with the minimal API. Anyone having any more question, guys? They can ask me now.
Yeah, Pranay.
Hmm. Yes, I just mentioned here so that you should not have any kind of postman not working. Clear? Yeah. Otherwise, you guys are going to test and still it is not working, and you will come with that sir, it is not working with our postman. So I don't know why it is not working. Might be postman treating accept header in a different way, and yeah, that's fine. But it is working because in most of the time, whenever the client is going to concept, they are going to use this header right as part of our business logic. Yes, someone asking some question. Anyone having any more question?
Yeah, Pranay.
Okay. Yeah. So, so tomorrow we will discuss the minimal API. After minimal API, we will discuss the unit testing. Okay. Thank you, guys.